Hello, and welcome to the Glossy Beauty Debrief here on LinkedIn. I'm Lexi Lipsack, West Coast correspondent here at Glossy, and I'm joined with some of my colleagues, Tatiana Pyle, our managing editor at Glossy, Emily Jensen, our senior reporter, and Courtney Marabella, Glossy's social media and audience manager. Hello, and welcome, ladies. How's it going today? Tatiana, you just finished a show, right?
I did. I just got back from the Jane Wade show. It was fantastic. The show was commentary on corporate greed and capitalism in America. So It was a really interesting take. I love her point of view. I think her clothes are fabulous. So it was really nice to be able to be there and see the show.
Oh, how interesting. I love that theme. Well, I'm so glad you were able to fit one more in. I'm jealous. I was just mentioning to everyone, I'm our West Coast correspondent, so I never get to cover Fashion Week, but, sometimes remotely from LA, but excited to kind of dive in here. As everyone knows, today is the last day of New York Fashion Week. So we're going to be recapping some of beauty's big moments through the first week of this fashion month, as well as some of the opportunities that brands successfully capitalized through the week. So we only have 30 minutes, so let's go ahead and dive in. I want to start with some of the bigger fashion show sponsorships. Emily, let's start with you today because I know you just published a really great beauty briefing all about the role that beauty brands are playing at New York Fashion Week. Curious, what did you find in your reporting?
Yeah, so obviously, makeup brands, hair care brands, makeup artists have always been a really important part of any fashion show. And there's a couple interesting ones that we saw this season. One big one that I'm sure a lot of you heard about was the fact that Christian Siriano, back in August, put a call out on TikTok saying that his makeup sponsor had pulled out of the show, which was taking place in just a few weeks. So he was, asking his community on TikTok for help on this. He said he really wanted to have up and coming makeup artists come work with him on this show. He invited people just to reach out to him if they could be in New York in September to do the show. And Revlon, the mass drugstore brand, saw this and stepped in. So Revlon, reached out to Siriano's team, and they offered to, provide product for the show. They hired Vincent Bucando, who is a celebrity makeup artist. He's worked with people like Jenna Ortega, Katie Holmes to be the lead makeup artist. And they also invited a team of 20 up-and-coming makeup artists to work on the show and have this opportunity to do a really big New York Fashion Week show. And Revlon, when I spoke to them for this piece, one thing that they emphasized is the fact that they had not been at New York Fashion Week for 10 years. It just, wasn't the right opportunity for them.
Wow.
And, obviously sponsoring a show is a big undertaking. It costs thousands of dollars to, provide product, provide artists. And it's not always a big return for brands as well, as far as what you're really getting out of it. But what they said to me is, they thought the message that Christian Siriano put out to his following, that he was just directly reaching out and asking for help with his followers, resonated with them, being a mass drugstore brand, where they want the brand to feel very accessible to people. So for them, it seemed like a good fit, especially to work with up and coming artists as well, along with Vincent. So I found that really interesting. They also, use the opportunity, of course, to promote some new products, like one of their eyeliners that was launched earlier this year. It was kind of this 1920s kind of flapper, smoky eye look going on for the show. Another one that caught my eye too was Dew, the skincare brand. I'm sure many of you have heard about. Very different from Revlon. This is a newer brand, very buzzy on social media. And they worked with Kalina Strato on what was an entirely makeup-free show. So skincare was really the spotlight for it. They, provided their full line to the artists backstage. For them, they also used the opportunity to promote some new launches as well, like their cleanser, which just came out this month. They also teased an upcoming barrier balm that's not out yet. So that I thought was a really interesting one. I spoke with Charlotte Palomino, the co-founder of Dew, and she brought up a good point that she said it's not a big ROI for brands, and Dew has been sponsoring makeup shows for a couple seasons now. I think going back to 2021, so this isn't a new venture for them. And what she was saying was, working with a brand for a fashion show, again, it's not like you're there selling products and making money off of it directly, but you are getting your product in front of a whole audience backstage. All makeup artists want to have skincare in their kits, of course. So doing this, they're able to directly work with some of those artists who might, pull them for shoots later on. They're also building a relationship with the clothing brand, like Clean Estrada in this case, and that maybe allows them to pull from Clean Estrada's, clothing for Du's own photo shoots in the future. They're also then having access to gifting for the attendees of the show. At the Clean Estrada show, you had Ella Emhoff, who's obviously very buzzy right now with the election coming up. She was there. That brings you in the eye of people who, might later on promote your brand through social media. They might work with you on shoots later on. So that was very interesting. Another big one that I was actually very surprised to hear about, Tarte made its Fashion Week debut, which I didn't realize it had never worked with Fashion Week.
Oh, wow.
They worked with Alice and Olivia on their spring presentation. So those were all some big ones. And then, of course, you see some of the usual ones like Jinsoon, the manicurist. She did nails for many brands like Monse and Jason Wu. Also had a skincare sponsor, Kate Somerville. Nanushka also built another skincare sponsor, Amorvica, which is a Hungarian brand. So all kinds of brands participating this time around in some interesting ways.
That's so interesting. I feel like that's a really great call out. And I just did a little bit of reporting this week on New York Fashion Week, but I sort of had the same thing also mentioned from brands, which is that it's really hard to measure that return on investment. And it is exactly like you're saying, Emily. That's sort of what I heard as well, where she's like, a lot of this is kind of like that unseen networking to kind of like make these connections and then get your products into the right kits. Of course, we know that for makeup artists and hairstylists who are at the beginning of their career or just in the New York scene, like these are very important weeks for them to be working, to be networking, and to be like learning about new products. Do you think that Revlon found success with them coming back to New York Fashion Week? Like, how did the dust settle on the Christian Siriano show?
I'm really curious. And Revlon, I was looking at their social media. Obviously, they did post some BTS and things like that from the show. Revlon's not a really buzzy brand on social media. It's not like a TikTok kind of sensation. They have 3 million followers on Instagram, which is massive. But these posts didn't really get a lot of traction. They have maybe hundreds of likes or views. It's still, I would imagine, very important for them to be back at Fashion Week, with a big brand like Christian Siriano. Obviously, we covered it. Other outlets like WWD covered this return to the runway for them. I'm curious if maybe in the long term, they'll see more, again, as you were saying, that kind of soft power maybe return on this kind of play, maybe, building relationships with some of those budding makeup artists. Maybe the fact that they were able to do this TikTok call out will help it kind of bring a new, younger audience to, think about Revlon again. So I'm really curious. I think, again, there's also a certain level of kind of prestige and artistry that comes with being at a Fashion Week show. I mean, everyone remembers the Pat McGrath, John Galliano look from earlier this year during Couture Week that was a massive sensation. Very few looks are going to have that level of virality, of course, but Fashion Week is where you kind of get to be very experimental and showcase more kind of daring looks that maybe you wouldn't think of for a drugstore brand.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I do feel like it is such a gamble because you don't really know. You don't know what the look is going to be. It's sort of like sponsoring a red carpet event where it's like, well, you can sponsor, but it might be a nude nail or it might be no makeup, and then you're not going to get the press that you kind of hope for. But of course, with a big brand like Revlon, I'm sure that they were, up for the risk. But I mean, I'm looking at the images now on Christian Siriano's Instagram, and they're so pretty. And the look is very, very, it's smudgy and nice, but it's also, it's very makeup-y, it's not a nude eye or anything. I feel like they got kind of lucky with the look.
Yeah, there's products there that they can push. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Wow. And then going back to what you were saying about dew, I feel like I always kind of wonder, and Tatiana, I know you're going to talk a little bit about this. I always sort of wonder how skincare brands fare at Fashion Week. Of course, we know that getting into the right kits is super vital, but I will say that that image that I think you included it, Emily, unless I saw it somewhere else, but the image of like the branding on the eye patches, I'm like, well, at least they have that because that's like a really iconic shot for their social media.
Whoever came up with those eye patches, it's like, okay, they maybe that was Charlotte or someone from their team. Like, yes, like now you can actually have a skincare brand kind of show up on camera that way. It's really smart.
Yeah. Well, what do you think after sort of like researching all of this and coming out with the briefing, what do you sort of think makes for a really successful partnership between a beauty brand and a fashion show? What are the sort of like most important ingredients there?
I think having some, I know this word gets tossed around all the time, but like some authentic sort of synergy like between the style of the brand and like the makeup or beauty brand and the show itself. I do think like the Dew Colina Strata is a very good example of that. One thing that Charlotte was saying about Colina Strata is they agree with like the sustainability values around Colina Strata of like not overproducing product. I know Dew also speaks a lot about like sustainability in their packaging, like using recycled aluminum, reducing the amount of packaging. So again, there's a natural kind of partnership there. They're both kind of young, buzzy, sort of offbeat brands. Like Colina Strata used, not just traditional models. They used like older models. They use models with disabilities, models of different genders, models of color. And I think that matches with the way that Dew kind of presents itself as being like a very young brand that aligns with like Gen Z kind of values, very informative, very friendly. So I think those all work well together for it. Not some fashion brands obviously now like have their own beauty brand. Like Jason Wu, I noticed, they had Kate Somerville doing the skincare, but they have their own beauty brand as well that was shouted out as being used on the models. So as if you're reaching out to an outside brand that's not already like part of your brand ecosphere, I think it makes sense to kind of consider like not just aesthetically, but even just like who the audience is for this brand and like does that match with who we're speaking to with our clothes.
Yeah, that's really great. That's a great POV here. Well, I want to talk a little bit more. Tatiana, I know you were also running around to different shows and doing some coverage. And I know that you looked into beauty brands entering sort of new makeup skincare partnership with brands just for New York Fashion Week and launching new products and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, curious, what did you find in your reporting?
Yeah, so there is probably a lot of overlap between what Emily and I both covered during the week. But what I found most interesting was that Prabal Garang, who happens to also be the co-chair of the CFDA, he ended his 10-year-long partnership with MAC Cosmetics this season and opted to go the no makeup route, which we've seen kind of blow up throughout this season. And he partnered with Peach and Lily, which is a 6-year-old skincare brand that has never, ever done any partnerships with New York, with any brand that presented during New York Fashion Week. So they are, for now, signed on with a 2-season-long partnership, and they will just be focusing on really highlighting different trends within that no makeup category. So this particular collection, he highlighted that trend, the Korean skincare trend of the glass skin, which I thought was really smart because it's kind of what we talked about, what you two talked about earlier. If you're going to go a no makeup route on the runway as a beauty brand or a skincare brand, there aren't many opportunities to really capitalize on brand awareness or bringing it full circle or getting that return on investment. So with the glass skin trend really being at the forefront and you're seeing as models are walking down the runway, their shiny looks, you might automatically think it is that porcelain type of look that Pat McGrath kind of coined during her Maison Margiela couture show last season. But if you do some Googling, you would see that it was Peach and Lily instead. So I think it was a really smart way for a skincare brand that doesn't have many opportunities to have a lot of brand placement on a runway to capitalize on that runway opportunity. outside of behind the scenes. And then what I also found interesting, there were so many newcomers. So there was Peach and Lily, and then as Emily mentioned, Jason Wu, and then also Patrick Ta, which I wasn't even aware that this was the very first time that he's ever worked with a brand on the runway. You would assume a brand as big as Patrick Ta has already had a partnership like this in this capacity. So this was his first time. He partnered with Monse, which is I believe Monse is about 10 years old at this point, but the brand has been recirculating and getting a lot of brand awareness because they did style Michelle Obama, which we talked about in previous Glossy reporting. They styled Michelle Obama during the DNC in Chicago last month. So a lot of people all eyes have been on Monse. So I think this particular runway, a lot of people are going to be watching to see what they did, and for Patrick Ta to have partnered with that brand, it was a really, really smart choice. I think it was very strategic. People are Googling Monse. People are going to be seeing that Patrick Ta also happens to be on the runway for the first time. So I think for brands to really capitalize on this opportunity, whether it be a skincare brand or a makeup brand, the timing has to be right, which sometimes is coincidental as happenstance, but I think for both Peach and Lily and for Patrick Ta, the timing was perfect because either they are capitalizing on this no makeup trend, or there was a cultural moment that is going to bring eyes to the brand, which inadvertently is also bringing eyes to the makeup counterpart as well. And then in terms of product launches, Starface has been strategically releasing products during New York Fashion Week. And I think unlike Peach and Lily and Patrick Ta, which don't really have products that have branding per se, but Starface, everyone knows if you see that star patch on someone's skin, you know it's a Starface product. So last season, they worked with Luar, and they put, I think Luar did no makeup as well on the runway, and they put pimple patches on the models' faces. So that was a very apparent branding opportunity for Starface. But this season, what they opted to do was unveil or launch a new product, which is their first ever lip balm. So unlike the pimple patches, which are very much so synonymous with Starface at this point, it was kind of tricky because they didn't have that opportunity to have an actual tangible product, rather a lip gloss. But they did work with Susan Alexandra, who is known for those really cool beaded bags, to promote their gloss down the runway this season.
How interesting. It almost feels like a little bit, I don't want to be dramatic here, but it almost feels like a little bit of the changing of the guard. We're seeing, Mac kind of no longer being part of some of these shows. We're seeing Tarte, Patrick Ta, Peach and Lily coming sort of in and refreshing some of the brands that we see backstage. Mm-hmm. Tatiana, do you feel like this year felt a little bit different? I don't cover New York Fashion Week because I'm West Coast, but I'm assuming it's been a few seasons since we've been sort of back full force since the pandemic, right? Or do you think that this year felt a little bit different or a little bit bigger?
Yeah, I think this year was kind of the snowball of sorts to really seeing beauty evolve into a new space, because we've been seeing it on social media that people are really moving away from these full glam looks, and it's being reflected on the runway as well. So I'm really curious to see moving forward how brands are going to have those moments, beauty brands at least, and skincare brands, how are they going to have those moments to really capitalize at New York Fashion Week? If it's not something like a Starface where they have actual physical products that can be branded on the runway, how are these brands going to take advantage of these moments outside of people doing the due diligence after the fact to Google, what's happening, who is partnering with these brands? So I do foresee in the future moments like maybe the dough or topicals that are known for eye patches. They'll probably be a little bit more intentional about seeing if they can push their physical products onto the runway so they can also have those branding opportunities as well. And with this shift to the no makeup or the glass skin or the modest makeup. And Pat McGrath worked with, the name is escaping me right now, but Pat McGrath worked with the brand this season as well. And she did this nude makeup where it was very modest blush, very elegant, very simple looks. So I can foresee skincare brands really getting in on these opportunities. The ones that have eye patches or the ones that have something type of like nasal strips, anything where they can actually push a physical product down the runway.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. I feel like some of the trends as well that we're seeing on the runway are maybe fit a little bit better into what you're saying. I remember years ago when I used to cover all of the different trends. I feel like they were way more wild, they were way more aspirational, way more avant-garde. And now you look at the top trends and it's pretty conducive to a skincare brand or a lip balm, right? It's not as bold, but maybe that's just my West Coast perspective.
No, totally. You are 100% right. And just to clarify, Pat McGrath worked with Alaya this season on that nude makeup look.
It's an Alaya.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. That's so cool. Well, let me see here. So what do you think, I guess, just to I know we kind of touched on this already, but curious, what do you think are the biggest advantages for a skincare brand to partner when you don't necessarily see the patches or see the impact?
Yeah, I think it's kind of touching upon what you said. You really have to play into a trend. And it's especially advantageous if the trend is kind of associated with the brand. So, for instance, Peach and Lily, they were some of the pioneers of the glass skin trend, the movement that has moved over to, the eastern part of the world. Or the western part of the world. We've been able to associate glass skin with Peach and Lily. So for Prabal to have that glass skin at the forefront of the runway and it be a skincare brand that led the charge, it was easily identifiable back to Peach and Lily. So I think if any brands moving forward really want to win during this time, they either have to start a trend or be synonymous with said trend so people can automatically identify, oh, that is a X look or that's a Y look. And I'm going to also use Pat McGrath again as an example because, again, she really popularized that porcelain skin look. So everyone knows if it's a porcelain skin type of look, it's either an homage to Pat or she is the one behind the scenes creating those looks. And actually, Lexi, I see we have someone with their hand raised asking to speak.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry about that. Hi, Tanya. Okay, let me welcome you in. Oh, here we go. Tanya, welcome. Do you have a question or a comment? We'll give you a second. Tatiana, great reporting there. I feel like those are all such great insights and so interesting. We have a few minutes left. I want to just jump in really quickly. I covered an article that went up this morning all about how some brands are using proximity marketing at New York Fashion Week. And of course, we know that sponsoring a show or showing up in the face of a famous attendee can be powerful, like we're discussing today, if done correctly. But it's out of reach for so many brands. So we're seeing this little rise in sort of proximity marketing at New York Fashion Week, taking advantage of people who are there in the city for the week, taking advantage of the opportunity to connect with people that would be, really challenging to connect with IRL. So I covered the Air Milkshake gifting suite this week, and there definitely were some very interesting findings here. So I would say that I talked to a couple brands, including Half Magic, Hum Supernatural, and really realized that the gifting suite opportunity can be really, really good for brands who maybe want to pop up and want to do something, but don't necessarily have the bandwidth or the resources to do it. So Air Milkshake is one of the, I would say, buzzier gifting suites. It was launched in 2021 by Marta May Friedman, who was actually the co-founder of Do, which we talked about earlier today. She also has a couple other projects that she's done. And they invited around 95 different influencers, burgeoning actors, editors, makeup artists, creators, all of these different people. 100 people were able to popping by actually right now. She started it yesterday and it wraps tomorrow. And I've just heard such amazing things around, key opinion leader, relationship building, press impressions, getting the brands into the hands of celebrities, getting the sort of brands into the hands of artists. I spoke to the CMO over at Half Magic, and she gave me a really great anecdote around they set up a little face gem station for everyone, and their big ROI is they're hoping to pop up in street style sort of across Fashion Week for today and yesterday, because they had an artist pop in and also sort of like affix some of these face gems to influencers' faces to kind of make New York Fashion Week street style a little bit more exciting. But yeah, I think it's just a cool opportunity to consider gifting suites for brands that sort of want to do something, but don't necessarily have the resources to do something like what we're talking about today.
That's so cool. I kind of wish that I had known about it so I could have gone and did some on the ground reporting for you, Lexi.
Yes.
But how, it must be hard to really track the success there. How do you think the brands that you spoke to are measuring the success of a New York gifting suite?
Yeah, that's sort of like exactly the same thing that both of you and Emily have been saying today. It's really hard to measure the ROI on this. I did speak to the VP of marketing over at Hum Supernatural, who is so Hum Supernatural is a line of like full body deodorant. They have a really buzzy viral body oil. They have just regular deodorant sticks as well, and they're clean and all of the different attributes that people are really looking for right now in deodorant. But they've done it the pop-up a few times, and they had shared a couple anecdotes with me around getting into the hands of like a Women's Wear Daily editor, for example, and then later being included in like a large editorial. They also talked a little bit about, she also spoke a bit about showing up in a variety of makeup artists bags as well later, and sort of like kicking off some of those relationships. I actually wasn't aware of this, but apparently there's like a large trend on social media to use all body, full body deodorant, like on your hairline or in a variety of places that makeup artists might, dab a little bit on. So even though that's not a traditional beauty brand, I feel like they found a lot of success with it. And then the last thing I'll probably just mention is sort of the challenge in sort of how they sort of select the products to gift in these gifting suites, because of course you cannot just send everything and it can't just be this shopping experience. And so I spoke to the GM over at Half Magic, Michelle, and she told me all about how they selected the products. And basically it was all about not giving too many options and instead selecting just 3 colors of each of the 3 products. So one was like a stick, like an eyeshadow stick. One was a potted glitter. And then there are the face gems, of course. And then this, of course, isn't necessarily shocking or that interesting, but it's basically the strategy with the brands that I spoke to is all about selecting universal shades, universal scents, products that basically can work for anyone. So I think that was sort of very interesting and a nice alternative for getting involved at something like New York Fashion Week with proximity marketing. Well, this was such a great conversation. Tatiana, Emily, thank you so much. You guys have been doing so much great work, and I'm so excited to be able to hear about it on the West Coast, and a little bit of jealousy, of course, coming from me. Sounds so exciting, all of the shows and all the reporting you guys have both been doing. But so this is it for us today. Thank you all for joining us. We'll be back again in 2 weeks with another great topic. Please follow us and check out all of the reporting that we're talking about today, which is live right now on Glossy. And we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.